Chapter 41. Dominate Human. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Louis' electromagnetic cannon had nothing to do with magic. Rather, it was a product of the Terran civilization's technology. After undergoing his genetic modification, Terran's biotechnology had granted him this new ability. Initially, he would only have had an organ for spitting out flames, but he had taken notice of the strange appendage after becoming a juvenile dragon. This organ could utilize the Lorentz effect to fire a hyper-accelerated metal shell at a target. In Earth terms, it was an advanced kinetic energy weapon. L.RG modern Earth technology could create railguns, but they were often impractical to use, and still existed at the research stage. In Louis' opinion, there were probably very few things that could withstand this new skill. Even aircraft carriers would likely take on water after a single shot. If he estimated its strength under San Soliol's power system, it would likely rank around the legendary level. Without significant preparation, even dragons would be torn to shreds. To the gods, it might not mean much, but to everyone under it was an absolute killer of an attack. Setting aside any deities, if Earth and San Soliol were to declare war on one another, the Earth's weapons would definitely be able to kill legendary rank powerhouses. That said, San Soliol's psychic and soul magic would certainly leave significant casualties on the Earth's side. Both civilizations seemed to have clear weaknesses. Louis on the other hand was a unique existence that could combine both their strengths. He both possessed a working knowledge of Earth's scientific principles and was capable of slinging powerful spells on a whim. In the future, if he ever battled gods, then his scientific knowledge would be a great advantage. That said, at present, the railgun wasn't something he could spam as he pleased. It was powered by Louis' own energy, and as a juvenile dragon, he could only fire off a few rounds before needing to recover. Each round cost a significant amount of his own bioenergy which could only be recuperated through rest. He had found metal for the cannon while wandering the forests on his walks. By compacting it into a shell with his powers, he would launch it at an enemy via electromagnetic propulsion. As impressive as it looked, the lightning from his earlier shot wouldn't actually harm anyone. "I'll just use the dragon breath for weak enemies and the railgun for stronger ones then. It's good to have another card on hand. At least I don't have to turn into a demigod for every single thing. It's a shame that I can only fire 3 to 4 rounds though," he muttered inwardly. Nevertheless, he was not discouraged. Since he had started his evolutionary path, he would only become stronger from now on. Soon he would be able to fire it off continuously, and perhaps he would even gain stronger abilities in the future. He almost giggled at the thought of being able to fire a plasma cannon one day. Perhaps he would be able to demolish even spacecraft. Still, artillery missiles were a danger he had to keep in mind. Even if he could sink battleships, it was best to be prudent, as his powerful attack was offset by his less impressive defenses. Louis turned to the professor and his students, revealing a toothy grin. His eyes seemed to flash as he soared away. Flew away, that dragon finally flew away. The professor's traumatized entourage let out a collective gasp of relief as they collapsed on the floor. A few remained paralyzed on the ground. "Professor, let's get out of here. This place, the Amazon jungle, is just too crazy," a student sobbed. "Did anyone catch what happened on film?" Professor Johnson suddenly asked. His tone was unnaturally calm, but in their exhaustion, the students did not notice anything strange about it. All captured, sir." Lucy took 2 deep breaths and nodded in a hurry. As a research team in the wilds, they would always have their video recording equipment on. The professor grinned, "Very good. Send it to me immediately. We need to upload them onto the internet as soon as we can. In fact, we better do so before we leave this jungle, otherwise, the government will likely confiscate the videos." He continued, "This is too good of a discovery to be covered up by anyone." Professor Johnson turned his back on the students. If someone was standing in front of him at this time, they would have noticed that his expression was different compared to before. He seemed to become a different person entirely. This was another spell of the crown of dominance, dominate human. At the same moment, the Pentagon was in an uproar. Chapter 42. America in shock. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Inside the Pentagon, a certain room was in tumult. Remember the confidentiality agreement. If anyone dares utter a peep of this, I'll have them court-martialed. The Secretary of Defense sat at the head of the table. He gazed at each and every one of the people in the room with an ice glare. Hidden beneath his cold demeanor, however, was a profound unease. The corners of his eyebrows throbbed, and a thin layer of cold sweat covered his forehead. Perhaps if a mystic looked into his eyes they would see the confusion and concern that currently plagued him. Yes, sir. Every person in the room assented immediately. There were many faces, old and young, and each performed a respectful salute upon responding. The faces of the younger officials, however, were tinged with excitement. In front of the table was a large screen. In modern warfare, soldiers granted critical tasks would often carry cameras along with themselves. These would record and broadcast the real-time events that transpired around them. Not long ago, Secretary Johnson had been called to witness the live broadcast of the expedition into the Amazon forest. Shivering imperceptibly, he lowered his head once more and looked at the tablet in his hands. He replayed the events that he had seen over and over again. After watching that thing decimate the ground force and then proceed to demolish the aerial support, he didn't quite know what to believe. Laughing bitterly he spoke, "This isn't a movie, right? Someone, please tell me they're pulling a prank." "Unfortunately, sir, it's exactly as you've seen," one of his men whispered to him. "Then you tell me, what the hell is this monster? Why can it breathe fire, and what the hell was that weird thing it shot out of its mouth later?" "Sir, I believe that is a dragon," a younger subordinate replied with caution. "Yeah, I know, genius. It's a goddamn dragon. But why the hell is it here, on Earth, and not in some fairy tale? Next thing you know we'll be seeing unicorns." The secretary once again issued a questioning roar. This time no one dared answer him. Johnson was confident that there were no secrets he was unaware of. As the world's superpower's greatest military authority, there should be no secrets he couldn't access with a snap of his fingers. But this went beyond everything he ever dreamed. Phew. Exhaling, the secretary calmed down. "All right. Quickly dispatch another force to Brazil. Have them go where the dragon appeared, and make sure we get to it before any other country does." "All right." He paused before continuing, "Also pore over all the satellite imagery we have access to. I want you to find out where that dragon is right now." There was a flurry of movement as various officials moved instantly to execute his instructions. Ensure this video is classified. And under the highest privileges as well. But before that, make a copy for me. I will take this to the president myself. Pressing a button on his desk, he spoke to the communication outlet in front of him. "I need to meet with the president immediately, right now, at this instant. This is an emergency, very urgent. Whatever he's doing right now, in whatever meeting he is in, he must stop and listen to my report first." Grabbing his coat, the Secretary of Defense walked out very fast. At the same time, vehicles parked at the Pentagon were ready to go. The Department of Defense was very efficient, and it didn't take long for the Secretary of Defense to arrive at the White House. He walked into the President's office in a hurry. Once inside, the Secretary of Defense saw that the Secretary of State was also there. He nodded at her and briskly walked to the President's desk. "Johnson, what's the matter? I'll have you know I'm very busy. Those idiot congressmen don't understand why the wall I want to build is so important." The President of the United States of America was a man over 70 years old. He sat behind his desk and complained. Although his tone was comical, he could be seen to be hale and hearty. However, after seeing his cabinet member's serious expression, his expression lost its humor instantly. He waved his hand, and all the other staff members inside the office, except for the Secretary of State, exited the room. "Well, spit it out. What's going on, Bedodem?" the president said while rubbing his brow. "First of all, before I get to the main point, I would like to ask, Your Excellency, is there any clause in the American law that legally restricts certain secrets to be known only by the president and nobody else, even me, the Secretary of Defense?" The president was stumped for a moment and thought for a moment before saying, "There is no such clause. You are my equal in terms of access to classified information. All the privileges I enjoy, you do as well." The Secretary of Defense sighed with relief upon hearing this and handed over his tablet device. "Then please take a look at this video that was captured in the Amazon jungle not long ago. Allow me to preface by saying that this isn't the work of any special effects. Everything you see is 100% real." With a doubtful expression, the president took the tablet and tapped on the play button. The Secretary of State came over to his side. At first, the two were watching in a relaxed manner, but slowly, their faces warped in concern. Their eyes were full of shock and incredulity. It didn't take long for the video to finish, and silence descended on the office. Suddenly, the Secretary of Defense stretched out his hand and pressed down on the president's own. Besides the president's hand was a smartphone. "Ah, sorry. I just realized, there was something I wanted to tweet earlier." The president gave an embarrassed smile. "No," the Secretaries of Defense and State shouted in unison. Okay. I get it. I'm not going to tweet it." "You guys don't have to be so loud." The president rubbed his hand that had been pressed down. After hesitating for a moment, he once again carefully raised his hand and said, "Let me ask again, do you guys think that it's too late for me to learn magic?" The Secretary of Defense felt a headache. Although the president in front of him had an extremely keen sense of business, sometimes he felt like a live comedian. He pressed on his head and spoke in a bad mood, "Sorry, Your Excellency. I don't think you can." "Well, that's a shame." The president grunted. At that moment, there was an urgent knock on the door of the president's office. The president frowned and said, "Come in." The person who came in from outside the room was a staff member of the Defense Department. His face was filled with anxiety that he didn't even pay attention to courtesy as he shouted, "Not good, sir. Those videos have been posted on YouTube." The Secretary of Defense was stunned. Before he could say anything, the president stood up excitedly and said, "Since they've been posted on YouTube, there's no problem if I tweet about it." Chapter 43. Shocking the humans again. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Uploaded to YouTube. The Secretary of Defense froze. He ignored the president who was sneakily reaching for his phone and roared at his subordinate, "What do you mean by that? Who dared to go against my orders?" The Secretary of Defense was incensed, not at the idea that the video had been uploaded, but that one of his subordinates had dared defy his orders and commit such a treacherous act. The reporting officer replied immediately, "It was not done by an insider, sir." "Not an insider? Then is it a hacker?" Johnson was stunned. With its robust cybersecurity, he could not believe that hackers could breach even the outermost perimeters of the Pentagon's network. To talk even less of the core information. If that was really possible, the United States government might as well be an open book. "No sir, there hasn't been any breach of that sort. The uploaded video is different from ours." "Another video?" He paused for a moment, confused, but soon realized what had happened. "I remember now. Damn it. It's that Stanford professor and his students." It only took a moment for him to realize that his namesake was responsible. "Bastard. That bastard. This is my mistake. How could I forget that they might be recording as well?" The Secretary of Defense anxiously paced up and down the room. "What should we do now?" Should we arrest them? If the professor was found to have a video that the Department of Defense expressly prohibited the upload of, they had reasons to arrest him, but since they hadn't told him about it, he was only uploading the video as a normal citizen, making it impossible for any charges to stick. The Secretary of State on the side pressed down the president's hand, preventing him from getting his phone. The president gave an aggrieved look before turning to Johnson. Since things have already happened, don't blame yourself, Johnson. Think about how to solve it first. Can't the video be taken down right now? The president looked at the subordinate who reported. Your Excellency, after the video was uploaded, there had already been hundreds of thousands of views. By now numerous copies exist all around the world, and taking down the original would be useless. Well, in that case, let's try to guide the public opinion. Let's say it's a teaser for a Hollywood blockbuster. In the meantime, we should quickly deploy manpower to search the place where the dragon appeared. We can temporarily hide it from the people, but definitely not from other countries. At this time, the president seemed to become serious and issued orders in an orderly manner. But no one knew that he was eager to have everything be exposed so that he could tweet as much as he wanted. Being the President of the United States of America was such a good position. He was the first to know all the secrets, and in the future, he could brag about it. This was what the president thought. Yes, Mr. President. I'll get right on it. The Secretary of Defense also knew that there was no time to lose. After saluting to the president, he and his subordinate left quickly. The president turned to the Secretary of State. Did you know that when I was a child, I wanted to be a wizard, a superhero? I once thought that was nothing more than a childish fantasy, but it seems this dream might just come true. After taking out the military, Louis continued heading away from the village. Without bothering to hide, he weaved through the jungle, uprooting trees and bushes with each step forward. He took care not to underestimate Earthlings. It was quite possible that the United States, the preeminent military power, had already devoted all of its geosynchronous satellites over the Amazon jungle to look out for him. Under that level of scrutiny, he was bound to be discovered sooner or later. Because these observers were in orbit, Louis couldn't perceive them, even with his eyesight. He did not bother to ask the intelligent brain either, as he did not trust it. Though it swore to look out for his life and interests, he would try to get on by himself before resorting to its advice. From transmigration to impossible feats of bioengineering, the intelligent brain had proven itself to possess unfathomable abilities. If it decided to turn those against Louis in order to seek its own ends, he would likely be unable to resist it. Who knows? It might be grooming his body to steal it later. Louis had read many novels where the protagonists held blind faith in the systems or companions they were assigned. And he knew that though it rarely happened in the stories themselves, there was little stopping a malevolent actor from setting up the entire thing to trip up the main characters before swooping in to take them for all they had. Of course, he still needed the intelligent brain's power and knowledge in the meantime, and so he would not deny everything it offered. He would trust it to an extent since he had no choice. And he would carefully vet all of its advice before acting on it. If the intelligent brain was truly good to him, then it would be the best outcome, and his caution would prove unnecessary. However, if it was evil, then he would have some leeway to counterattack. As the saying goes, prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Louis did not think himself a genius, but he could at least avoid playing the fool. Under no condition would he become a puppet of the intelligent brain. This place should be good. It's far enough from the village. After advancing thousands of kilometers into the thick of the forest, Louis finally stopped. He had distanced himself from the indigenes because he didn't want the Americans to find them. At the moment, he still had to conduct several experiments using their faith. He parted some scales near his chest and pulled out a magic scroll. I hope this thing works well and doesn't scare off those cute little humans. With a malicious grin, he opened the scroll. At the same time, chaos once again erupted in the Pentagon. Chapter 44. Teleportation spell. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After finding the dragon, the Secretary of Defense had mobilized all available satellites to track and confirm its location. This would be maintained until they managed to deploy weapons that were powerful enough to capture it. It would be a difficult job, and losing track of the dragon even once would mean finding it would be even more difficult the next time. Nevertheless, they carried on their search. Despite making short work of the initial forces, the Americans were far from dissuaded. After all, those were but the tiniest sliver of its true military might. And many other, more powerful weapons lay in their stockpiles. The screen portrayed the dragon lumbering through the forest towards the north, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. The head of the observation team did not know what the dragon was going to do. He asked for a cup of coffee while the others continued to stare at the screen, recording the dragon's trajectory from time to time. Why doesn't it fly? Why does it insist on running? A curious official raised the question and was met with silence as no one responded. Everyone else was equally as stumped. Judging from how the dragon annihilated 3 Apache helicopters earlier, they had all seen how fast it could fly, but somehow it preferred running in the jungle instead of flying. After advancing a certain distance, the dragon stopped. The observation team zoomed onto its location, thinking that they could make out its actions more clearly. The creature appeared to be standing still while chanting something. Suddenly, an illusory doorway arose in front of it. The door seemed to be made of gray light and was embossed with numerous cryptic runes. Following its appearance, the dragon stepped into the doorway. When its body completely disappeared, the door of light rapidly shrunk and disappeared. The observation team had lost the dragon. Whoosh! The observation team stood up in alarm. Quick, get me a read on the immediate surroundings. Find that dragon, the head ordered. There was a flurry of taps as an operator rapidly typed on his keyboard. The single video which took up all of the screen split into several simultaneous streams of the surrounding environment. As a variety of images flashed by the screen, they all paid attention to any anomalies, but they found no traces of their target. This is crazy. Did it actually teleport? It did. There's no way we saw wrong. It literally up and disappeared right in front of our eyes. Our scanners aren't responding. We have completely lost track of the target. A dragon. What next? Will angels and demons pour out from the heavens and earth? The observation team was in a din. One official even took out a cross, praying silently to his god. Sir, this is an enhanced picture from the satellite. Please take a look. The operator zoomed in on the image of the portal. This was the clearest image the satellite had taken, making it barely possible to make out the runes. Find me every theologian, occultist, historian, and archaeologist you can. Show them copies of these ruins, and see what they can make of them. Right, pass them on to linguists as well. Maybe they can make something out of it. The leader of the observation team quickly gave his orders. It was a fruitless effort, as they had not the slightest of ties to Earth. They belonged to San Soliel and San Soliel alone. The officer swallowed his saliva, suppressing a vague sense of terror. He knew it would be difficult to find the dragon, especially since its means were completely beyond their understanding. By teleporting alone it had exceeded Earth's technology by an order of several magnitudes. This wasn't even a serious theoretical possibility as yet. It was something that belonged primarily to the realm of science fiction. To think of the sheer damage such an ability could cause. With it, one could easily transport their troops to the heart of their enemy's territory and strike critical blows before retreating with ease. Even logistical support would become far simpler and cheaper. Perhaps the world was about to change. Louis could guess the shock of his spectators. This was the main reason why he used the teleportation spell. Before leaving San Soliel, he had brought some of his spoils, a bunch of magic scrolls. In case he encountered something he couldn't solve, he could also use them to solve the crisis. There were many high-grade magic scrolls among his spoils. According to Marches, who signed a contract to become his slave, these scrolls were precious items. Even a high-ranking archmage would not be able to release different spells consecutively at their peak condition. But the teleportation spell was not high-level magic. It was only 5th rank magic. For some small mages, they wouldn't even be able to touch this spell, but for archmages, everyone could use it. This spell might have been extremely terrifying on Earth, but in the magical world of San Soliel, there were too many ways to deal with it. A detect teleportation or a dimensional anchor spell was enough to stop it in its tracks. And reckless use of it might get the user stuck in a dimensional fault which only legendary rank mages and above could survive. Directly transporting an army to the enemy base was not impossible, but that was not something a normal mage could use, as it was the legendary magic, group teleportation. Legendary magic was difficult to detect and stop. This was the difference between Earth's civilization and San Soliel's. In the magical world, teleportation could only allow a mage to shorten the travel distance, but on Earth, it was a terrifying weapon because no one on Earth could detect it. When Louis stepped out of the portal, he was already on top of an ocean, the largest ocean on Earth, the Pacific Ocean. The spell required detailed coordinates for the teleportation, but Louis was not familiar with other places except China. He could not teleport directly to the Chinese cities, so he finally chose the ocean as his destination. His next plan also required him to be on the ocean. After this I should go back to Dragon City. I hope the residents don't starve to death before I return, Louis muttered. Chapter 45. Spreading to the world. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Amazon jungle had never been so lively. A number of American researchers were scouting the area, hoping to find leads on the dragon. After signing a strict confidentiality agreement, they were each given the opportunity to view the classified footage of the dragon as well as learn of everything that had happened. Each of them had jumped on this once-in-a lifetime opportunity and was searching the forest with gusto. The primary search locations were the places where the dragon had appeared and disappeared. At both locations, teams of biochemists in hazmat suits were carefully collecting and storing away any remains left by its breath. These samples were carefully packaged in hopes of shedding more light on the creature's nature. Another team was examining the remains of its electric attack. These professionals worked to quantify the threat level the dragon represented. At the same time, they were responsible for transporting the corpses of the deceased back home for a proper burial. Half a day of careful searching yielded little useful information, and the teams prepared to close for the time being. Inquiries into the nature of the portal that had taken the dragon away also yielded little useful information. Suddenly someone noticed a potential breakthrough in the search. "Look here." His companions quickly gathered around. It was a gold-colored scale stained with dirt. Those who had seen the videos immediately recognized it as belonging to the dragon. "Quickly place it in storage." The scale was carefully packaged and stored away in a secure safe. Afterward, they informed the military of their discovery. It didn't take long for several helicopters to fly in. A team of heavily armed elite soldiers took possession of the safe and left quickly. Their greatest harvest was probably this scale, which proved the existence of the giant dragon as well as magic. But no one noticed the magic rune that suddenly flashed on the dragon's scale when it was placed in the safe. It faded quickly and left no traces. After the helicopter flew away, several hidden squads in the distance stopped their observation. "Sir. That's all we can shoot. I just spotted intelligence squads from Russia, France, England, and a few other countries." A young Chinese agent put away his tools and whispered to the middle-aged man beside him. "Okay. With this much movement by the American government, others are sure to notice it. It seems they couldn't afford to move slowly, even if it meant tipping everyone else off." The middle-aged man rubbed his chin with his hand and watched the group of helicopters fly away. "Well, let's just send this information to the higher-ups and let them deal with the specifics. It's not our place to ask such questions." Understood, sir. The young man taking the video nodded and turned to the workstation next to him. He began to operate it with a professional deftness. At the same time, other intelligence agencies from around the world were doing the same thing. Because their activities were so high-profile, it was obvious that something big was happening in the Amazon. But there was no need for other countries to find ways to dig up information. Soon, they would find out why the American forces would send such a large force in the Amazon jungle because this matter had already spread on the internet. Beijing, China, early in the morning, Gui Bin stretched and got up from the bed. With a snort, he pulled open the curtains to let the brilliant sunlight outside shine into his small room. After picking up his cell phone to order takeout, he walked to the washroom and cleaned himself up. Gui Bin was a freelancer on the surface. He would take on any work such as writing essays, shooting videos, and editing videos. But he had a secret special identity. He was a member of the Department of Mysteries under the Ministry of National Defense. His work was to investigate mysterious events happening around the world. It was a low-brow department with little prestige. It neither made money nor received much of it. In fact, its name was often forgotten. All of the world's major governments had such departments. Although they were in a scientific world, no one could guarantee that the supernatural did not exist. The role of these departments was to fully explore these possibilities. But unfortunately, after so many years, no one had found any supernatural events. Those who claimed to have supernatural powers were all scammers. Those few people who seemed to have supernatural abilities were just more susceptible than others. They were not supernatural abilities at all. Gradually, these departments had become dispensable. Their annual funding was barely enough to allow them to exist. The most inevitable thing was that, because it was a department in researching the supernatural, things had to be kept extremely confidential, especially when they were under the Ministry of Defense. Even inside the system, not many people know about the existence of this department. It was simply hard to tell people that the country had a department that investigated the supernatural. If a government's official position regarding the supernatural was that it did not exist, then such a department would be a slap on the face for them. The people might even begin to suspect how their tax money was used. Therefore, although Gui Bin was in the system, there was no structure in it. This also meant that he did not need to go to an office and work. The department even allowed him to do part-time work to support himself. Gui Bin also thought that this was not a bad job. He could just consider himself as a true freelancer, waking up and sleeping whenever he wanted. As part of the Department of Mysteries, he was quite a capable person. He could work part-time jobs every month and receive a state salary on top of it. Although the salary was very little, it was better than nothing. He was happy staying in the capital every day. After washing up, Gui Bin sat down in front of a computer. He began to browse the internet for anything interesting. When he opened the top videos leaderboard, he noticed the video that was ranked at the top. This video was just uploaded today. The number of views is quite high. Gui Bin looked at the title. Shocking. A legendary dragon appeared in the Amazon jungle. It's another clickbait. This was his first thought, but seeing that the video was in first, he still decided to take a look. Chapter 46. Shocking the world. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Clicking on the video, Gui Bin readjusted himself on his chair and began to watch. The first thing he saw was a dense jungle and a group of foreigners accompanied by the military. Their pace through the forest was quick but thorough as they examined the wildlife. They did not speak much, but from their occasional words, he could place their accent. Gui Bin tagged them as American. Thank you for Greenie's translation. What kind of video is this? Don't tell me it's another marketing scheme. I'll pretend to be Greenie. Looking at the chat pop-ups in this video, Gui Bin smiled in amusement. Perhaps the pop-ups were the most interesting thing about this website after all. What is this video? Is it a movie trailer or a documentary? Oh, a real-time filming technique was used, Guebin muttered. He checked its length and saw that it was only 20 minutes long. Far too long for a trailer but still too short for a standard movie. He assumed it was a documentary and continued watching. The beginning of the video was fairly boring. As a member of the Department of Mysteries, Guebin had to have several skills, and so he also understood English to a degree. He was young and with an active mind. Even if the department was mostly ignored, he still possessed many competencies that most others lacked. Sometimes he felt as though he was born in the wrong place and time. Otherwise, he might have been able to make it big. High energy ahead. Continuous high energy ahead. Please prepare yourself. Seeing the screen full of pop-ups, Guebin subconsciously sat up straight. Even his breathing slowed down as he stared in anticipation. Soon, the shaky video stopped shaking. In front of the screen, an elegant and majestic golden dragon appeared. It was resting on the ground at the moment. After noticing the cameraman and team, the dragon raised its head and gazed at them with its cold slit pupils. Through the screen alone Guebin began to feel fear as the video progressed. His breathing was stifled, and his heartbeat accelerated as though some kind of magic was cast on him. Wicked, he muttered, completely incredulous. At the same moment, many people were also expressing their shock as can be seen from the pop-ups. Crap. So scary. This dragon is just like the real thing. I actually almost peed myself. This is too cool. Which company did it? Is Hollywood at this level? Too lifelike. This dragon is covered in gold, I approve, it's very dragon-like. But unlike everyone else who marveled at the special effects, Louis was feeling a completely different emotion. Shock. This is not created post-production. As a person with skills in post-production, Guebin could tell that this video was completely unedited. The cinematography was clearly amateurish, and creating a dragon with such a level of detail would require vastly more computing power than any company could provide. There were many people with the same thoughts as Guebin, but no matter how they explained this through the pop-ups, there were more people who scoffed at them, because if this was not a movie, it meant that there was a real dragon on Earth. This rebuttal truly made them speechless. In the next moment, the dragon approached the cameraman to reveal its majestic yet terrifying appearance. When it spoke human-like words, the pop-ups on the screen went crazy. The dragon has spoken. Greenie, please translate what the dragon said. Translate your fart. No one has heard this language before. It's simply non-existent. Well, maybe this is the dragon's language. This was an unintentional discovery of the truth. Crap, it can speak English. This is American English, right? My 10 years of learning English is wasted. I simply could not compare to a dragon. Mom, I want to learn English from the dragon. What the hell? What is this language understanding spell? It is real magic. Do not believe in these lies. The pop-ups were sometimes amusing. The serious atmosphere was instantly dispersed with the gags from them. Next, just like a movie plot, the American soldiers who thought they were invincible began to attack the dragon. A massacre had occurred, and the following scenes were heavily censored with mosaics. Despite this, however, everyone could tell what lay behind those red pixelated blotches. If it was truly a doctored production, it was an inhumanly realistic one. Every facet of the video, from the spray of blood and viscera to the screams of the slaughtered soldiers, seemed completely realistic. After the dragon flew up and annihilated 3 helicopters, the video ended. **********. Dragon breath. That is definitely dragon breath. Can anybody tell me what that light the dragon spat out at the end is? The number of pop-ups became lesser towards the end of the video. It was as if everyone was immersed in the massacre. Watching this video made them feel as if they were at the scene of the massacre as their bodies let out cold sweat. That was until the last pop-up appeared across the center of the screen, which truly chilled everyone's hearts. I am a Chinese living in Brazil. Today, the local newspaper reported that a large amount of U.S. troops, helicopters, tanks, and a biochemical team appeared. This video was first uploaded on YouTube. It's already a hot topic of discussion in other countries. Seeing this, Gu Bin immediately breached the Great Firewall of China and checked foreign websites. He found that the netizens of the world were caught in a great discussion. This matter had completely blown up the world. "This can't be real," Gu Bin murmured. He leaned back in his chair and finally noticed that his doorbell had been ringing for some time now. His takeout had arrived a while ago. He hurriedly went to open the door, apologized to the delivery boy, and collected his meal. After returning inside the room, Gu Bin put down the takeaway and prepared to eat when his phone suddenly rang. Seeing the caller ID, Gu Bin was stunned, because the person calling was the leader he had not seen for a long time. Could it be related to that video? Thinking like this, Gu Bin answered the call. The leader did not waste any time and simply said, "Gu Bin, put down anything you are doing right now. Come to the office right now." Chapter 47. The world searches for the dragon. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Gu Bin looked unhappily at the takeaway he had ordered. He had been looking forward to it, but though his stomach was still rumbling with hunger, orders were orders. He could only endure the pangs and make his way out of the house. Riding in the back seat of a taxi, Gu Bin closed his eyes to rest. He was not an idiot. He had rarely seen the department head in person ever since he had joined. And now that he had received such urgent summons, he knew that this likely led back to the video from earlier. He felt a vague excitement. Although there was no guarantee that the event was real, and that it was merely a means for the U.S. to cover up something else, this might perhaps be the only genuine supernatural occurrence the department had ever faced. It was exactly the sort of thing that he had always wanted to find. He calmed himself again. It didn't take long for the cab to arrive at the city hall. As the department had little to no staff, their lack of official office space couldn't be helped. Whenever they needed to convene, they would find an empty room in the city hall and discuss the latest scammers and frauds they had found out. After finishing the meeting, they'd have dinner together before returning to their homes. The department kept a large database of supernatural practitioners. This made it easy to understand each situation of fraud by consulting their records. The preceding investigation could then continue more smoothly. After showing his ID to the guard, Gu Bin walked towards an isolated conference room inside the building. This was their usual point of gathering, and it had eventually become something like their office. Now, however, the conference room was quite different from what it normally was. Previously it would be a simple walk to the room with no interruptions to speak of, but now the corridor was packed with numerous guards. He had to undergo a thorough body search and detailed investigation of his identity before he could enter. "Little Gu is here. Everyone has been waiting for you." There was a small round table inside the waiting room with not many people seated. Except for his boss, a 40-something-year-old pot-bellied man, the rest were his colleagues. In total there were only 5 people in the department. "Chief, you," Gu Bin began to protest at the chief's choice of moniker, but the next moment his body stiffened. This was because he saw the person at the head of the table. As an employee of the Ministry of National Defense, Gu Bin naturally knew the healthy old man. He was the Minister of Defense, and he often appeared in news broadcasts. "Good day, sir." Gu Bin quickly straightened his back and saluted in a sloppy way. He wasn't a soldier after all. "Relax, Comrade Gu, and please take a seat. I came over this time to familiarize myself with your department. You are the last to arrive, so it's a pleasure to finally meet you." The minister had a kind face. After sizing up Gu Bin, he beckoned him to sit down. Just as Gu Bin sat down, the minister stood up and smiled at him. Then he spoke to Gue Bin's boss beside him, "Little C, I am now acquainted with everyone in your department. Next, I will leave you to explain things to them according to what we discussed before." "Yes, sir. I will definitely accomplish this task." The chief of the department stood up and gave a standard military salute. The minister nodded in satisfaction, patted Gue Bin on the shoulder, and left the place with the guards. The tension in the room disappeared upon his exit. Several of Gue Bin's colleagues began to chatter among themselves. As they were used to being in the chief's company, they felt no need to be nervous. "Okay, everyone, be quiet for a moment." Chief C clapped his hands and brought order to the room once again. "First of all, let me tell everyone the good news. Everyone present, including me, is now promoted 2 levels." Chief C's face was full of smugness as if his suffering had finally ended. "Chief, will our wages increase?" What a nonsensical question. Of course, they will. Chief C glared at his subordinate, indicating that he should not interrupt him. "Secondly, you should not call me chief anymore. We are now known as the 9th Emergency Special Disaster Management Team. In the future, call me team leader. Also, we now have our own office space. We don't need to borrow a room in the city hall anymore, and can directly go to our office in the August 1st building." "Wow," the crowd suddenly clamored. Naturally, they knew what the building was. It was the Ministry of National Defense HQ. Having an office there meant that they were finally recognized to enter the core location. Alright, everyone, take it easy. In the future, our treatment will be very good. The higher.UPS will not only send guards to protect us but also provide resources to us, who are called the most experienced in this field." Team leader C paused. His face gradually became serious. "You should all know what is happening, right?" Everyone put away their joy and gave a heavy nod. The matter of the video was too big. It was simply impossible for them to remain ignorant. Naturally, they also knew that they were not the only ones taking action. Their group was only one of the many responsible departments. The higher.ups had professionals check the authenticity of the video. Since they could not find any traces of post-processing, then it's probably real. A word from their team leader made everyone inhale hard with a vague excitement. What did it mean? It meant that dragons and magic existed. Going a bit deeper, it also meant that legends and myths might also be real. Before we discuss what to do next, everyone will sign a new confidentiality agreement. Team leader C placed a stack of paper in front of each person. As long as a person worked for the Ministry of National Defense, it was inevitable for them to sign these kinds of agreements, but depending on the level of confidentiality, the content of the agreements would differ. What they were now signing were stricter terms compared to before. Let me state in advance. After signing this agreement, you will immediately be court-martialed for leaking state secrets if you reveal anything to outsiders. Team leader C spoke with a serious expression. But his team members did not think much at all. After giving the terms a brief look, they all signed their names. It would be a joke if they didn't sign it. This was simply a rare opportunity to possibly get in touch with the secret truth of the world. How could they just let this chance go? Very well, since everyone has signed the confidentiality agreement, take a look at these photos. The team leader used a projector to display images on the wall. This is a photo taken by one of ours in Brazil, so pay attention to it. He operated the computer to show the images. The images were photos of U.S. forces wearing biochemical suits and searching through the Amazon jungle. There were tanks and helicopters accompanying them. In the last photo, a safe was being carried away by the U.S. military on a helicopter. This photo was taken in the Amazon jungle by one of our country's satellites. You can see that there is a clear trail running for around 100 kilometers. Whatever the cause, it must be large. As you well know by now, this corroborates with the information we gleaned from the online video. Thus, it has a 90% chance of being real. Everyone looked nervously at the photos with bated breaths. Team leader, the safe being protected by the US Army likely contained some body parts of the dragon. Guebin spoke with excitement. That's right. The higher-ups had also speculated this, but only the American government knows what's really inside. They may have obtained something important before us. Team leader C took a puff of his cigarette and said, other countries are probably doing the same thing as us now. We have already allied with Russia, Europe, Japan, and other powerful international forces in asking the American government to disclose detailed information. Guebin felt that this was natural. In this kind of event that potentially involved the secrets of supernatural power, even allies of the United States of America would work against it. Only through collective pressure could they force out any information. Our economy has grown significantly over the past 30 years, and now only the US stands above us in that regard. That said, we are lacking the kind of diplomatic capital they possess. This is a good opportunity to improve our general diplomatic position. Perhaps we might even become the leaders of this coalition. This is a rare opportunity where almost any outcome will be good for us. Hearing the words of the team leader, Guebin looked at him in amazement. It was the first time he found out that their leader, who dawdled all day, had this kind of political awareness. Gentlemen, after today, everyone's going to be busy. Your days of lazing around are now over. Everyone will report to the new workplace this afternoon. If this thing is real and not some conspiracy by the United States of America, then the world will change. The team leader's every single word contained heavy implications. Governments around the world were busy mobilizing resources to organize new departments. Satellites were continuously monitoring the world, looking for the giant dragon that had disappeared. And the one who started everything, Louis, was at the Pacific Ocean, unleashing the spell contained inside the crown of dominance again, dominate human. Chapter 48. Let me bring more surprises to Earth. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Professor Johnson awoke from a trance. Despite looking no different from before, those familiar with him would likely notice that he had different mannerisms compared to the past. This was because though he was Professor Johnson, he also wasn't. Louis had used the dominate human spell to once again take over his body. Louis had initially spared the professor and his students so that he could use them to spread the news of his existence to the world and alert other countries. This way, the American government would have to expend effort in dealing with the diplomatic aftermath of his actions. In the meantime, they would be severely limited in their means of finding and confronting him. Step by step he managed to achieve all of his aims. Of course, he still didn't let his guard down. After all, he had his final trump card, which was the ability to escape to San Soliel. If things ever got bad on Earth, he'd simply head there and vice versa. In the meantime, however, he could risk exposing himself. Right. Now it's time to find food. Professor Johnson murmured. Since Louis had once been human, he faced no difficulties in acclimating to the new body. If he had been born a dragon, then he would likely be clumsy with it at first. The spell, dominate human, would leave a seed on the body of the target if cast successfully for the first time. The next time the caster wished to control the target, they could easily use the spell once again with the seed as an anchor. Given that Earthlings had almost no resistance to spells, Louis could manipulate a person for up to several hours. BDNVL.M, I didn't think the spell could work even at such a distance. Magic is quite potent, it seems. Louis sighed before manipulating the professor's body to open the computer. There were many restrictions to the spell, dominate human. For example, it could only dominate a single person and not a group. Additionally, the range of the spell's initial casting was quite small. Finally, once the caster was in control of the target, they could not obtain the target's memories and habits. Everything was up to the caster's actions. And if they couldn't pull a good enough impression of the host, they'd likely be discovered soon. This was why the spell was relatively unpopular. If the crown of dominance did not have this spell, Louis might not have bothered to learn it. Perhaps if the spell had fewer limitations, Louis would already have taken over the President of the United States of America. It was a shame though, that he was not very familiar with his mannerisms and speech patterns. Even if he managed to get close to the President and take control of him, he'd likely fail to provide a convincing impression. Furthermore, as powerful as presidents could be, they still had limits. Congress would easily veto anything that seemed too out there. Unless he could take over everyone, it would be a pointless task. But if he was powerful enough to do something on that scale, what would even be the point? He might as well just force them instead. Therefore, it was important to power up. Pondering, Louis began to collate the resources he needed. The professor's body was currently in his clean and tidy home. After the incident in the Amazon jungle, he had been questioned by the US military for half a day, but Louis had cleverly delayed the video's release to avoid catching their attention. The US government could not convict the professor. Moreover, the professor was very knowledgeable and had many connections. The US government did not dare go too far and finally released him. In the end, the professor was confused and did not know what he did, because he had no memory of when he was controlled. After poking around the house, Louis made himself a cup of coffee. He had been a dragon for a while, causing him to feel nostalgia to be back in a human's body. Louis first searched the internet and found out that the video had exploded out of proportion. People all over the world were discussing the existence of dragons. They were even launching demonstrations to have the US government reveal more information about it. Unfortunately for them, the US government paid little attention to them, and simply dismissed the video as a clever hoax. Sneering, Louis ignored the US government's attempts. As more supernatural events occurred, he wanted to see how they'd keep covering things up. I wonder how the scientists are going to react. Louis clicked his tongue and gloated. He was happy to create trouble. Even Louis himself could not believe how fast he was adapting to his new identity. Although he still had some human habits and thoughts, he had also accepted a dragon's way of thinking. Now, he was already considering himself as a real dragon, the predator at the top of the food chain. He was no longer a weak human with a short lifespan. But there had been merit to having the intelligence of a human. Now, he had both intelligence and power. Found it. This person truly deserved to be called a Stanford professor. His network is really rich. Fortunately, I don't need to meet with anyone. As long as I make a call with the professor's voice, no one would probably be able to suspect that he was not himself. Louis gleefully looked at the professor's phone book, which recorded the numbers of many people. Thanks to modern smartphones, facial recognition, and fingerprint detection, Louis was able to open the professor's phone. All right. Shall we unleash a few more surprises? Chapter 49. Putting the United States of America in the palm of your hands. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Sonoran Desert, Arizona, United States of America, is one of the largest and hottest deserts in North America, with a total area of almost 300,000 square kilometers. Somewhere in this arid wasteland, buried deep underneath the cracked earth, was a large scale hidden laboratory. The security within the complex was airtight. There was a guard post every 5 steps, and a sentry every 10. The white spotless walls were blanketed with bright lights which spilled into every nook and cranny of the building, leaving no shadows. Every inch of the facility was monitored by cameras, and the entire building gave off an imposing presence that would chill visitors. As the guards stood alert for any potential security problem, the researchers within the facility moved through unhindered. Each wore protective clothing. As perhaps the most secretive laboratory in the US, it held many contents and research projects. Standing within the center of one of the building's many tightly supervised rooms was a transparent cabinet. Within the room were various high-tech mechanical arms moving with purpose. Outside the room, however, were several scientists discussing with a military official. How is the research on the Dragon scale going? His Excellency the President and the Secretary of Defense desire for quick progress on this. The soldier straightened his back and asked. It is going smoothly, but understand that it will take time for its results to come out. Unfortunately, as there is only a single sample of the experimental material, we cannot employ violent but effective methodologies. The phenotypic properties of the scale are simply outstanding. It possesses hardness and ductility not to be found in any organic substance. In fact, I strongly suspect it is some kind of alloy. This is definitely not something an ordinary creature on Earth can possess. Another biologist said with an excited expression. The soldier rolled his eyes at their verbosity. That it couldn't be found anywhere on Earth was a given. After all, it was from a dragon. Where could you find another similar material? Nevertheless, the scientist's words made his heart flutter slightly. At the very least they had scientifically proven that the creature was significantly different from all other creatures on Earth. They had scientifically proven that dragons existed. Can you crack the secret of the dragon's genetic code? The soldier asked impatiently. With an embarrassed smile the biologist rubbed his hands. You should understand that even the human genome isn't considered completely deciphered, even with access to all organs and modern techniques. Deriving the dragon's genetic sequence from its scale will likely prove impossible. After all, the scale is but an insignificant part of its body and does not carry all of its genes. The scientist dabbed his flushed forehead with a handkerchief. Moreover, it is, for lack of a better term, very magical. Its genes seem to be protected by some kind of mysterious power. The best we can do is only observe them, but not manipulate them. Magic. Hearing the biologist's words, the soldier repeated one word. The first thing he thought of was a special power that humans could not understand. It was also the one protecting the dragon's body structure. Suddenly, a light flickered on the golden dragon scale that was placed inside the sealed laboratory. A mystical rune appeared on it. What's going on? The biologist and soldier were startled and hurriedly asked. The people around the place also panicked. One of the scientists observing the scale hurriedly said, Sir, we don't know what happened. A strange symbol appeared on the scale. Aside from a pulse of strange energy, our systems did not detect anything else. The scientist quickly tapped a few times on the keyboard, and a picture of the mysterious rune taken just now was enlarged on a screen. The scholars and soldiers in the audience were all looking at each other, completely confused about the symbol. Maybe. We need to find some occultists, or symbolists, or something to study it. The soldier who was speaking before gave his suggestion. Louis's consciousness descended on top of the dragon scales, and he began to observe everything around him with a peculiar perspective. He had heard everything that the biologist and soldier said. Louis scoffed at them. A dragon was a magical creature that could not be compared to a normal animal. Even the Terran civilization, which was capable of dimensional travel and killing many dragons as well as the dragon god, had to create a perfect dragon body using their biotechnology. In the end, they still had to rely on the power of magic and gods. With Earth's technology, wanting to study the source of a dragon's magical ability was tantamount to a fool's dream. If Earth had such capabilities, humanity would have long been able to travel to other dimensions. In fact, Louis had deliberately left this dragon scale. If the government found a mysterious existence like a dragon, they would definitely search the place. Louis had left a very conspicuous scale. As long as those were serious about it, they would definitely find it. Just as Louis expected, the American government obtained the scale and brought it back for research. Louis also left a spell on the scale. It was a commonly used spell in San Soliel, protective detection. This was a low-ranked spell with limited uses back in San Soliel. It allowed the caster to detect the sound, image, and other information near the casting medium. In short, it was a surveillance camera of the magic world. This magic was particularly conspicuous since mages could detect the fluctuations of magic on the medium. This spell was at best only used to supervise work. An archmage would normally cast it at several locations in their own territory as a warning to other people that the location was under their supervision. There was no concealment on this magic, allowing the fluctuations to be easily detected, but because there were no mages on Earth, Louis was able to take advantage of the spell and easily infiltrated one of the United States of America's heavily guarded laboratories. This was the difference in civilizations. The intelligent brain told Louis that there were still energy sources on Earth that had been scattered when the ship crashed. Leaving aside whether they could be found in the wild, if they were discovered by the government, then they would definitely collect them and store them in the most confidential research laboratories of the country for research. Naturally, a body part of a mysterious creature like a dragon must also be top secret. So, Louis had deliberately left a dragon scale and cast a protective detection spell on it. And just as expected, the American government had placed his scale in a secret laboratory. Louis thought about this and sneered. He felt pleasure at the fact that he alone had fooled the most powerful nation on Earth. There were many intelligent human beings. But humans had not yet come into contact with creatures like dragons, so they wouldn't know how intelligent they are. They could try to imagine it, but few would assume that he possessed a human soul and the corresponding level of cunning. He immediately inspected the surroundings and found that the place was extremely closely guarded. With his current strength, he would not be able to break in here whether from the front or from the back. At the very least, he had recorded the coordinates of the palace. Later, when he becomes strong enough, he would break in any time and search for the energy source. He was also anticipating more confidential information about the United States of America from his surveillance. These laboratories had a high degree of secrecy. Even the American government did not know everything about them, but the secrets of this powerful country were easily found out by Louis' small trick. Chapter 50. The myth reappears. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Pacific Ocean was the world's largest and deepest body of water. With an area of more than 100 million square kilometers, it contained countless islands and trenches. Finding a 10-meter-long object within it was far worse than looking for a needle in a haystack. Dozens of meters under the Pacific Ocean, a golden dragon suddenly opened his eyes. Fishes panicked to escape it, but they were downed by the creature in a single gulp. Shutting his mouth, Louis tasted his prey. He no longer needed to worry about stomach aches as his digestive system was now extremely powerful. He could even digest inorganic substances if he wished, and he had lost most of his aversion to food that humans couldn't eat after initially becoming a Jesus lizard. His palate had changed, and so he no longer needed to cook things to find them tasty. Slowly, his body floated up to the surface, and he pulled out several magic scrolls from his scales. After repeated trials, this shipping route should be fine. Now, the survival of my dragon city depends on whether I can accomplish this. Louis's eyes looked straight into the distance like a thief who was about to carry out a big heist. And indeed, he was. He looked down at the high-rank spell scrolls in his hand. If Marches were here, he would have bemoaned how wasteful Louis was being. But Louis himself couldn't help it. Before this, his body was just a baby dragon with no spell-casting ability. It took a while to evolve into a juvenile dragon that could cast spells, but because of the plight of Dragon City, he had to leave San Soliel and come back to Earth to make plans. Time simply did not give him the opportunity to learn many spells. When this task is over, I will definitely go back to San Soliel and properly learn magic. I won't ask to learn high-rank spells, but at least I want to learn low-rank spells, Louis muttered. Louis was able to taste how delicious it was to cast magic on Earth. He now had a great desire to learn magic. Here it comes. Louis's pupils shrunk for a moment and saw a dark shadow in the distance. The ocean freighter, the Neversner, belonged to the American Shipping Company, a business that was, confusingly, first listed on the Oslo Stock Exchange. The Neversner itself was registered in the British Virgin Islands. Although aircraft were faster, in terms of cost and carrying capacity, sea transportation was still the world's leading channel. Freight companies all over the world carried out the important task of importing and exporting. According to the classification, this ship was a Class 6 ship, carrying between 200,000 to 300,000 tons, which took about a month to arrive from North America to Asia. And this time, the Naversner's cargo was grain. The United States is the world's largest exporter of food, exporting nearly 100 million tons per year. Its total export of food was about a quarter of the total global exports. Most large farms in the United States have about 100 hectares of land. Due to successfully mechanizing its agricultural sector, it could provide a surplus of food for its citizens and export the remainder. So, it was said with some exaggeration that farmers in the United States of America were a group of rich landowners. The main export of food was corn and soybeans. Of course, wheat, pork, and other essential goods were also exported to Asia, Africa, and even Europe. These man-made steel structures could even make blue whales in the ocean look small. On the ship's deck, a few sailors were breathing in the ocean air while chatting. In the past, sea voyages were deadly endeavors where the slightest slip-up could lead to a watery death. In modern times, however, ships were able to skirt most natural disasters. The greatest dangers lay with man-made threats such as piracy. But the Pacific Ocean had always been the main sphere of influence of the United States Navy. Unlike places like the Caribbean, Malacca, and Somalia, pirates were relatively scarce here. Compared to the dangerous Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific Ocean was quieter, making work there quite comfortable. The only problem was the long distance. Lee, do you see? It's only been a day, but this video has traveled all over the world. It's amazing how the US Army was able to find such a creature like a dragon in the Amazon jungle. A sailor nibbled on fruit and joked with his colleague. Voyaging in the sea for a month could drive a person crazy, but thanks to modern technology, everyone was connected to the internet. They could even connect while they were in the Pacific Ocean, but the signal was not that great. How could I possibly be out of the loop? I even contacted home to confirm what's going on. My friends in New York say that celebrities and reporters have started a march on Washington. Apparently, they want the government to release more information. Haha, how could those politicians ever make such sensitive information public? My family also told me to be careful, saying that the world might become a dangerous place. Could it be that I have to watch out for giant dragons in the Pacific Ocean? Your family is probably asking you to be careful of sirens, to not be charmed by their songs. Once you're trapped, you would get your spirit sucked out. Not even your girlfriend would be able to attend your funeral. Ha 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 ha. There was a joyful clamor as the sailors burst into laughter. If dragons really existed and those myths and legends were real, then I would want to meet a mermaid. Oh, just imagine it. I wouldn't even mind if they robbed my soul. Are you okay in the head? We've crossed this route many times already. Have you ever seen a mermaid? This time is different. You can see that a dragon has already appeared, so it shouldn't be impossible for there to be mermaids. The voice retorted. Because the dragon in the Amazon jungle disappeared without reappearing, there was no impact on the lives of ordinary people. The dragon had only become a topic for after-dinner discussion. There were even people who were beginning to think that the video was a complete hoax, otherwise, how could there be no news of anything after so many days passed? The sailors continued to talk and laugh as they enjoyed a rare break. They began to brag about their girlfriends being the prettiest and talking about which beauties they were courting. Suddenly, one of the sailors noticed something wrong. He pointed at the surroundings and said, "Guys, don't you feel that the sky is weird?" The others looked around in confusion. They saw the turquoise blue sky and endless ocean rapidly change. They felt as if they were wearing presbyopic glasses. The ocean itself was still the same, but the space afar seemed to have become a distorted blur. They felt as if the distant scenery had been patched with mosaics. What the hell is happening? A sailor shouted in alarm, but no one could answer him. They had seen stormy seas before and even seen fierce sharks, but this was the first time they were witnessing this strange phenomenon. It was as if they had entered an unknown world. Go find the captain and the vice-captain. Ask them what's going on. The sailors were panicking and were about to enter the cabin. Suddenly, the ship shuddered to a halt in the middle of the ocean. The inertia caused the sailors to fall down onto the deck, and there were many cries of pain. After standing back up with difficulty, they cursed and the yelling continued again. Quickly look. Look at the tail of the ship. Shouts of panic tore through the air like torn curtains. They could see a huge whirlpool appear, and under the fearful gazes of the people, a monster beyond human imagination slowly crept out of the sea. Hey, man, is that the siren that you were looking for? A sailor's mouth was dry and his voice quavered. Oh, God! What the hell is that monster? The sailors' pupils contracted. They looked at the horrible creature with terrified expressions as if their hearts and guts were about to come out. What siren? Quickly move the ship. Don't let that thing come over. It's coming. Roars and screams turned the freighter into a complete mess.